It was my nervous system giving me information. And so all of those experiences inform how I tell stories, conduct interviews to try to help other people share their stories, write books, edit and publish books, help clients, everything. And I hate the thought of, had I continued to limit myself into this little box, it was so uncomfortable. There's so much cognitive dissonance. If I had not finally allowed myself to break out of that and allowed myself to explore these different parts of who I was as a person, I wouldn't be here today talking to you and meeting your beautiful daughter for the first time and reaching your audience, right? There's so many gifts to being yourself, and we think it's selfish, but it's the opposite of selfish to allow yourself to be yourself fully, because that's when you find your people and your purpose.
Welcome to this week's episode of Her Unshakeable Confidence. I'm Simone Knego.
And I'm Olivia Knego.
And today we have a really important guest with us. I'm going to say fun, also very interesting, Dr. Shafer Stedron. She's a musician turned physician. She's a neurologist, Jay Shetty, certified life coach, author, founder of Little House of Dreams Publishing, producer and host of the inspirational growth, health, and healing focused podcast, Talks with Dr. Shafer. She is the co-author of the #1 international best-selling Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 16, which was endorsed by Tony Robbins, and the author of the children's book, The Boy and His Brightly Colored Blocks. She's passionate about helping people to reclaim their stories and build their most beautiful future. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. It has been a rough week over here at Talks with Dr. Shafer and our little world. And because I know your world, I subscribe to your podcast. And Simone, you've been on my podcast. It has been something I've been looking forward to, just being in this nice environment and having such a great conversation. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited for you to be here. I kind of want to start with the transitions that you've made in life, because I always say that I'm a big believer in changing your mind. I have done many things. I started off as a CPA. I flipped houses. I went back to school to be a teacher. What else did I do? I worked in medical sales. Yes, I taught horseback riding lessons. Yes. And then I found my passion, which is storytelling. And so that's why I'm loving this episode for today. So you went from musician to neurologist to life coach, author, publisher, and podcaster. So you talk about reclaiming your story. How did that whole progression fit into reclaiming your story?
Yeah. Well, I would say of all of those pieces, the tangible thing that helped me with just kind of getting my claws back in the ground to start reclaiming my story was really the podcasting. I think self-awareness is so key. And in life, when we subscribe to an idea, this kind of externally crafted version of who we are because, oh, I got positive reinforcement from that, or my parents wanted me to go into this career, or my parents did this career, right? We create a persona, we dedicate ourselves to that. And if we don't commit to learning who we are and what we want, and we don't live flexibly, kind of riding the waves of life and going in the direction of the current, but we just really dedicate ourselves to that facade of person that we really aren't, but we're dedicated to continuing to pretending to be, we have this cognitive dissonance, and we have to break that mold somehow, and it's not easy. For me, of all the things that I had done in my life, the thing that helped me reclaim my story was podcasting, because I'm a verbal processor. And I think from listening to your podcast that both of you are similar in that way. You know, you like to talk it out. And so my podcast really started, if you go back and listen to the first episodes of Talks with Dr. Shafer, I was still on the tail end of what I call the messy middle. And I've heard you use that term too. So I know you know exactly what I mean. And I was still trying to just figure out how to stay afloat. And it really helped me do so. And I was in the throes of also undergoing my Jay Shetty training to become a life coach, which was such an incredible experience because, you know, I think all of us should understand what life coaching is, have coaching at some period. I think all physicians should understand coaching and therapy to a greater extent than they do. We don't get that training in medical school or residency. And I think it does such a disservice because it teaches you to listen. And when you learn how to listen to others, you learn also to value listening to yourself and to value creating an environment where the people around you are also really seeing you and listening to you. And then because I was on that journey, I was working with other coaches and training and other coaches who are training us and talking through challenges. And so talking through how the podcast was growing and promoting the podcast, putting myself out there because I had lived in a lot of isolation for years. And that was really scary and just simply a new habit, a new practice for me. And they said, you need to start having guests on your podcast. You need to start opening up this conversation to more than yourself. And that was the best encouragement and advice that I have ever received. And it led to me having wonderful discussions, conversations, and connections with people like you and so many people across the world that helped me again on that journey of reclaiming and writing the next chapter of my story. I can't rewrite what happened, what I've been through, but I can reclaim it. And so I'd say for me, podcasting is such a wonderful way to do that.
Yeah, I think for us, it's been a really powerful experience overall. I mean, I look at how much we've changed in our ability to communicate, in our ability to listen. It's interesting because a lot of times when I am in a conversation, what I notice is you can see the person waiting to say what they want to say next. They're not hearing me at all. Like they've already written that off because all of a sudden, after they said what they wanted to say, they've realized, oh, this is what I'm going to say next. And so there's no listening there. So the importance of listening, I think, is so huge. And however we can learn how to do that is so important.
Yeah.
Liv.
And I hear you too. I hear
Yeah.
you and Olivia do that. And I hear you not only listen, but accept, which as a mother can be so hard when your child is saying to you, man, you really messed up in this moment.
Yeah.
Well, that's
It's good.
an incredible, it's good. And it means that your child feels safe around you to tell you, and that they believe you can do better, right? Like we don't tell people they did badly for the most part if we don't think, I'm going to tell you this because I think you can do better because I believe in you. And so it's so beautiful to listen to your conversations and observe your relationship and the growth that's happened through the podcast. It's really cool.
Yeah. The other day we had a episode just the two of us, and I was trying to tell a story. She's like, oh my gosh, that is not the story. Back down. I'm telling the story. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Okay, go ahead. Again, it was in my head that was the story. But again, we each have a different version of our stories, right? Two people, three different answers. That's usually what happens. So,
Yeah.
how do you think your background in neurology gives you a different vantage point when it comes to coaching, when it comes to podcasting? Because I find that fascinating.
Well, I think when you understand the nervous system from a neurologist standpoint, and I know your husband, obviously, he understands neuroanatomy exquisitely as well as a neurosurgeon, you see it a bit differently. So there's the psychotherapeutic aspect, and I have a degree in psychology, and I worked as a research assistant on many studies when I was obtaining that degree. And so obtained my board certification in neurology and psychiatry because that's how it works. So, I have an understanding of all of these different methodologies, and then you add the life coaching. And to get back to what you led off with, I think the beauty of life and the full experience of life is when you stop labeling yourself as like, I'm a neurologist, so I can only be a scientist and I can only do you want to take some gabapentin for that? Or do you want to get an MRI? Like these are the approved things I'm allowed to do as a neurologist. And instead you're like, okay, I'm a neurologist. I understand neuroanatomy. I understand the chemical responses in your body, all of that. And there's this beautiful body of research and lived experience. And we can tap into tools about really listening and observing so that we can do a better job at all of the above, and the history of music so I can incorporate music. And it's kind of cheeky. It kind of feels like a little bit of a Taylor Swift style Easter egg. Even in my even in my show Talks with Dr. Shafer, the music, it's a little bit of a retrospective look at myself of who I was before I kind of went off the tracks when I wrote that song as a teenager. It's called Impulse. And the chorus is, impulse, don't lead me wrong, lead me where I belong forever. And when you listen to the song, it's really talking about that feeling you get in your body that's telling you where to go and encouraging you to listen to it and allow yourself to take that leap. But in the song, I called it an impulse. But now with what I understand as a neurologist and a coach and with the degree in psychology, it wasn't an impulse. It was my nervous system giving me information. And so all of those experiences inform how I tell stories, conduct interviews to try to help other people share their stories, write books, edit and publish books, help clients, everything. And I hate the thought of, had I continued to limit myself into this little box, it was so uncomfortable. There's so much cognitive dissonance. If I had not finally allowed myself to break out of that and allowed myself to explore these different parts of who I was as a person, I wouldn't be here today talking to you and meeting your beautiful daughter for the first time and reaching your audience, right? There's so many gifts to being yourself, and we think it's selfish, but it's the opposite of selfish to allow yourself to be yourself fully, because that's when you find your people and your purpose.
Yeah, I want to
love that.
Yeah, I want to dive into that more because we don't do that enough. I mean, that's one of the big things that I talk about is the not trying to be anybody else, right? Really understanding who you are and being proud of exactly who you are, not trying to change things. You don't need to change who you are. You need to change the way you see yourself. And yeah, I really want to dive into that some more because when we talk about social media, when we talk about even what we were talking about right before, kids at school and bullying, like this is all about feeling like you have to fit into a mold. And I think that is a ridiculous thing. Actually, I was on a call with someone the other day and we talked about labels, and he went a little bit further and he's like, I actually just came up with this. And he's like, labels become your lids. So, and I was like, oh, that's a really good one. He's like, oh, that's the first time I said that out loud. I was like, okay. So, but we tend to put ourselves in boxes. We tend to put other people's, in like, okay, they're this. And that's what you start believing you are. And so that idea of being proud of exactly who you are, I think is so important.
Yeah. And the scars, like all the little bits. And I often liken it to the analogy of a house plant, because that's really easy for people to visualize. It's less complex than we are as humans. It's hard to talk about the human experience, right? Because it takes too much time, and we come up with all these reasons why no, they should fit into this mold, because it's easier for my brain to envision them that way. But when you think about a house plant, it's growing, it's in a pot, it's going to outgrow that pot. You have to move it. And if you have it in the wrong environment, if it's not getting the right amount of sunlight, water, nutritional input, right, we know it will wilt and it can potentially die. And we're the same. And yet we would never tell the plant, how dare you outgrow this pot? We're like, yay, you grew. You don't fit here anymore. That's so exciting. I've been taking care of you and you grew. Oh my gosh. And now I get to like help you, and let's choose a nice pot and a nice place for you and make sure you've got all your nutrients. Like, we're excited to help that plant grow, and we've invested time in it because we like doing those things. Yet for ourselves, we hesitate to ask for help. When we need repotting, we feel shame. And then sometimes we stifle ourselves and try to stay there. And it can truly have devastating and even deadly consequences. And it is not an exaggeration. When I think about people that I have lost in this life or people that I've taken care of in clinic, so much of the pain that they experienced was unnecessary because it had all to do with that feeling of shame and that feeling of I need to keep myself here because what will people think, when realistically people they don't think that much.
No,
They don't
they're not
care.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember my husband saying to me one time, I'd sent out this email and like to me it was like kind of a big deal and no response, no response. And I'm like, well, I guess I offended them or I guess I, made them upset in some way. He
You were
said,
in
Simone,
here.
yeah, he's like, Simone, they're not even thinking about you.
Yeah.
Like they probably haven't even seen the email yet. Like there's nothing there happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we do that. But we do that all the time. Um, I love the repotting the plant analogy because it's so true. When other things grow and need change, we accept it, but we don't feel like we can do that for ourselves ever.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of growing since I've left New York. And I think it's hard for us because we're so connected to our past roots and like past friends. And it's kind of a hard thing the idea of you're outgrowing your friends or you're outgrowing who you were. But it's just part of life. And it's so hard to cling on to the past too. Like it makes your day such more of a burden than it could be if you just look to the future.
Olivia, how does that feel as a young person in 2025? Because Simone and I, we were young people at different, we're still young, don't get me wrong,
Yes.
but we were very young people at a different place and time. We didn't have social media like you do now. We didn't have that almost like constant reminder of like, there are people in my room with me because of social media, but like we just said, they don't care. They're off doing their thing in their lives. What is that experience like for you right now? And do you feel it differs with your chronic medical illness and with what you've experienced in life? Does it differ from what your peers are expressing?
I think that I have had to grow up a lot faster than a lot of people my age, for various reasons. Obviously, like I do have a chronic health condition. I have five siblings. I think like that in itself. But I was also like a year ahead in school, so I feel like I've had a higher level of maturity. I'm not going to say I'm the most mature person in the world because I'm not. Um, but I think a lot of it for me has been taking a step back. I had the only social media app on my phone is Instagram. I don't have anything else anymore because I think it's a waste of time. I have other things to do. Like I got rid of TikTok. I got rid of TikTok when they started promoting politicians, and I was like, okay, this is weird. I got rid of Snapchat because I thought you should be able to text somebody and not communicate over like pictures of your face. I thought that was a bit strange, but I see my peers and it kind of rules their life still. Like, I'm surrounded by pretty intelligent individuals in law school. Like, we're all here, we all made it, and yet I feel like the outside world still like bogs a lot of them down from what the actual focus should be. And not like your entire life should be law. No, that's not my entire life. But my entire life is moving forward as my individual self and not who I'm trying to represent myself online. And I think the burden behind social media is exhausting.
Mm.
But when you start just treating it as like a little fun thing, like, oh, I can post like I took this nice picture or I took this really weird picture. Who cares? Like, but when you just try to model your life after someone, honestly, people who have never going to go to law school, I think that's the easiest comparison here. Is like I spend so much time in a day studying. I do not have the time to do what influencers are doing. That's a job in their own respect, but I can't compare what I'm doing to what they're doing.
Yeah. And comparison is
I
the
think it would be a
thief of
hard
joy.
world. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it would be a hard world. I'm glad I had the age I am. I had, a good chunk of time without tech and social media. I think it'd be very hard to be a kid right now, that Generation Alpha, that you just grow up on it and you don't really know any better. You don't know like a life outside of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's good to hear your experience. And I wonder if I had asked you 5 years ago what your answer would have been, right? Because when you're younger and your frontal lobe is less developed, your frontal lobe, the exciting part is it's still developing.
I
Woohoo,
know.
you've got more to grow. That's really exciting. But 5 years ago, would that pull for acceptance have been stronger?
100%. I've talked about this a bit on the podcast before, but I struggled with a bit of disordered eating in high school and went over into college. And I would say predominantly because of what I see online. Because the body image that is represented to you is not my body. And I've done a really good job now of curating the people that I follow to be people that look like me. But, 5 years ago, even 5 years ago, which is crazy to say, there wasn't even that representation online. And it's only been 5 years. And I think, that is a scary thing. And I feel like I came out the other side stronger, but a lot of people get stuck into it. And you're in this cycle of eating disorders, lack of self-confidence, body dysmorphia. And I don't know how you get rid of it. It seems like a never-ending struggle.
And it's a tale as old as time. Simone, I'm sorry, I've kind of stolen the mic from you. I
No,
need to
it's
remember.
great. No.
But I want to, it makes me think of, it's different because of social media, but in a lot of ways it's the same or similar, because when Simone and I were growing up and it was like Britney Spears and Lily Allen, and, they were going through their own very public struggles and we were witnessing that. And they had a level of fitness that was really didn't really conform to the average American woman's experience. And they looked much healthier, though, than a lot of what we see now, which is scary, which is really, that's the thing that's scary. When I see some of what I see now, and I remember being in your shoes and 10 years ago, your shoes, and looking at the magazines. I also suffered from an eating disorder when I was a teenager. I was a singer. I was a professional singer. And I would literally be told, I had a manager tell me, I had a big photo shoot coming up, and told me I could only eat cucumbers and drink water it was 1 or 2 weeks before the shoot, because I needed to look a certain way. And that was completely unapologetic. I mean, it was just like this, you pay to play. This is the payment, right? This is what you need to do. So unfortunately it hasn't changed a lot. And it goes back to, I think, a lot of societal expectations for women.
Yeah.
And how do we navigate that? And how do we reclaim that narrative? And how do we say, especially now, I think, and it might have something to do with politics or just the current media agenda of we're getting back into, they're trying to pull us back into this period of being ultra thin. And, the somewhat non-PC response I have to my husband when we're just chatting about it, and I'm seeing this stuff, and I'm like, wait, so we're supposed to be ultra thin, but also it's World War III. Why would I deplete my resources in a time of war?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why would I take Ozempic?
I woke up angry about this today. I think just about the general treatment of women on social media right now, because it does feel like the last 3 years we are going back in time.
But people are I don't want to say allowing it to happen, but they're buying into it. I mean, people just scroll all day long, and still it's a rare thing to see people post without wearing makeup or talking about the crap that they're going through. We still see just the beautiful moments, the highlight reels. And I think that needs to change if we're really trying to build society, trying to build relationships. You have to be real. You can't just keep putting the little highlight pieces on there, because nobody will ever know who you are. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe you don't want people to know who you are. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe someone's not ready, and that's okay. I don't want to shame someone for not being ready to do that. And I love makeup. I would be so sad if someone told me I couldn't wear makeup anymore. But for me, I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
For me, it's not a mask. It's actually been a type of resistance for me often. There was a time when I was being really, really diminished in my home. I was a victim of domestic violence and abuse. And so like I was just getting so small. And one of the things that I still held on to was wearing just bright red lipstick. And it was kind of my little resistance, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, we can see these things as almost a form of art or resistance. And so I don't want anyone to feel shamed if they like that. But it all comes down to your intent and your motivation, right? If you are spending resources on something, so that you fit a mold because you think someone else wants it from you, you are basically branding yourself to be then a commodity that is, let's say, purchased or procured by a group of individuals that are not like you. So now, you know, you're kind of like a doll that they've brought home and you're in this environment or their office and now you're in their world. And you did make choices that set you up. You're not making them behave the way they're behaving, but you made choices that put you in that situation because in part there was self-abandonment going on. Whereas when you say, you know what, you know, if you're like a guy and you're like, you like to wear dresses and wear makeup, if you don't do that, you're not going to find your tribe, right? Like you can't find your tribe if you don't do that. And that's a really like obvious example, but why limit yourself, right? Or like if you are a woman who loves telling stories, but you're afraid to use your voice, how will you really lean into stories, right? So what is the work you need to do to get there? So those are maybe some like really obvious examples, but there are tiny little ways that we every single day abandon ourselves because we're so afraid of being who we are. But like I said, with the example of the young man that wants to dress in a way that they're worried they'll be shamed for, who are you performing for? They're not your people. They're not the people that you want to be with. So why are you setting yourself on this trajectory? So we can make choices trying to fit in and be someone else that completely sabotage the life that we actually want to lead. And so the question is why, right? We have to, that's the coaching aspect. Why are we doing that? And once we ask all of those onion, you know, peel back the layers of the onion questions to get to that. So now what do you want to do? Now that you truly understand what your goals are, what you want, what's the next step? Once we accept that nobody's watching, no one understands. Sorry, I have to wipe my nose. No one understands, no one's watching. So if you're alone on a stage and nobody's in the theater, what's the dance you want to do for you?
Yeah.
And let's practice those steps.
Yeah.
I actually feel like I went through that whole process in college. And now I'm finding myself again in law school, which I think maybe was just, you know, COVID on top of like being who knows what you are when you're in high school. And then being in New York City, I kind of tried to make myself someone I wasn't, especially like with my political beliefs and my activism. I feel like now that I'm in law school and surrounded by, you know, it's hard because I'm in the South, but I have some great friends who believe very similar things as me. Like, I feel passionate about it again. And I like forgot what this feeling was like to care about reading the news and just like having great conversations with people from all aspects. That's what I'd love to do in high school. I loved debate. I loved Harknesses. And it's been really nice to like get back into that. But when I was in New York, I was like, A, this is not my fight to fight anymore, which is stupid. But B, I was like, okay, I need to rebrand myself now that I'm going to college. I need to figure out who I was. But honestly, I feel like I knew myself better in high school than I did when I was in college.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
musical theater.
I think
I love
every
musical
time
theater, and I never talked about that in college because I
Yeah,
thought
but
it was embarrassing.
really,
Who cares?
yeah. I think every time we go through a life change, then we try to figure out who we are, right? What do we want to take with us? What do we want to leave behind? And that idea of what we choose to do is for ourselves, not for anybody else. So, what Shafer was saying about wearing the makeup, that's she loves that. Great. But don't do it because someone else tells you you have to. right?
Yeah.
No.
So, but it is interesting as we go through these life transitions, and you'll see it when you move to the next place where you work. Like, who do you want to be around? And then when you have kids, like, what changes then? Because each time we make a transition, I feel like we do evolve. I mean, we need to evolve. Again, we're the plant in the pot. Like, we got to keep growing. So things will change. But it's interesting that you didn't do the musical theater stuff, and I thought maybe it was because I always made you sing karaoke, so you didn't want to do any of that stuff anymore.
No, I honestly, like, I got over that. I think at some point I just was embarrassed.
Freshman year, it took a while.
Yeah.
Like, what we were talking about before the call, like, you don't want to make yourself, you want to fit into the mold. You want to fit into the mold, and that carried with me to college. And now that I'm here in law school, I think part of it is I live with my boyfriend. And so I came into this with an impression of, I don't care. I'm happy where I am now. I'm here to get my degree. And I think because I've been living a bit more authentically and just, you've listened. I have an attitude. I don't hold my mouth. I don't hold my face either. It's just who I am. And I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. I mean, I'm not going to hurt somebody's feelings. Obviously, that's never my intent, but I'm not going to stifle my feelings and my emotions at the expense of someone else or at the expense of myself.
I love that. I'm not going to hurt someone's feelings. And that includes you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
We never think about ourselves, though.
We don't. And we feel the need to add on, but I'm also not going to hurt me. And it's like, no, you already said that. That's redundant. You said, I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings on purpose. That includes me. You know what I mean? Just like, it's kind of like when you're in law school. I'm sure you've heard this because you're in law school. One of the first things my family law attorney taught me, literally, and it's gold, is that no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah,
so-
I love that. My new book, Real Confidence, A Simple Guide to Go from Unsure to Unshakable, will be coming out on February 17th, and it's available for pre-order now. So if you'll go to realconfidencebook.com, you can order it from your favorite online retailer. And there's lots of bonuses that will come with a pre-order. So when you go there, you can see everything that you're going to get with it. You just have to put in your order number, and the bonuses will be delivered to your inbox.
You better buy my mom's book.
Because it's amazing.
Because it's amazing.
I love you too.
Stop over explaining ourselves,
Yes.
right? We don't have to be like,
You don't
oh,
need
and
to.
also that means me because I'm a human and I deserve not to be hurt too. No, like I don't hurt people. I'm a person.
But so many people need that spelled out. Like they don't think of themselves. Well, they definitely don't. Okay. There's two parts to this. So I would say when we're talking about things we struggle with, we don't think of ourselves first. Like we don't put ourselves first in those situations. Obviously, there are some people that always put themselves first because they're very selfish, but it's the idea of how important it is for us to be part of the conversation. So when we are saying things to ourselves that are negative, we would never say those things to other people. Why would we say them to ourselves, right? So talk to yourself like you would your best friend. And that means no is a complete sentence, right? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sorry if you do talk to yourself. Take the time to say I'm sorry because that wound will still be there, just like with your friends. If you don't apologize to them, if you don't say, man, that is not how I intended to say it, and I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry I hurt you. And not I'm sorry I hurt you, but like, no, I'm really sorry I hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. You're important to me. And to when we look at ourselves in the mirror and have that thought and it sends off a neurochemical milieu in our head that's, you know, all those like shame neuron spirals are happening. We have to repair that relationship just like we repair with other people and just say, I'm sorry, body.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that helps me when I'm shaming my body that really brings me back to reality really quickly, especially as a physician, is, oh my gosh, buddy, I'm so sorry. Like one, I'm only alive because you're here. And two, you do incredible things for me all day long. And I am nitpicking you. I'm so sorry. Like I will do better me. And I think when you look at it from that perspective of like, I'm picking on my body for something it has, no control over my genetics,
Right.
what traumas have happened to me physically or mentally in my life. It can't control that. And why am I picking on it? So I think there's so many little habits that we can incorporate into our days like that, like saying, I'm going to speak to myself like I would my inner child. That's another way that a lot of people try to rewire their nervous system, right? I'm just going to see myself as a person. And that may require you personalizing yourself in a way that you've never done. You just kind of like live in this meat suit. You just kind of abuse it and you treat yourself like you're not a person. You may have to get in the habit of creating a persona for yourself that is all yours and treating that person with respect. And then I firmly believe that as you do that, you'll see your health improve, your relationships improve. Because when you treat yourself like a person, life just gets better. So, yeah.
It was something that we were talking about the other day, that it was, I think it's always a realization for our kids that we're not just their mom, we're a human too, right? We're learning all these things as we go as well. And I think that a lot of times our kids are like, "Oh no, you have to be able to do all this stuff because your title is mom." And well, I'm also a human and I mess up all the time.
Yeah.
You can verify that, Liv.
I don't think you mess up all the time.
Yeah. Sometimes.
I think the humility and the connection and the vulnerability of verbalizing when you mess up is a key part to helping your kids. And it's never too late. Like, it doesn't matter how old your kids are, start doing it, because that relationship is so incredibly resilient between mother and child and parent and child. It can go through a lot. Repair goes a long way. If you actively point out when you make mistakes, what I see occurring is so much more grace for the mistakes and so much more, instead of, yeah, well, like, yeah, you messed up. Like, yeah, it's okay. And it's safe to say that, but also a lot of grace of, you know what? Yeah, but you work really hard and I see you, because you've kind of laid the groundwork for seeing each other as people. So I think we as recovering people pleasers have to recognize our own part in creating that dynamic. I think a lot of times we show up for many years as the savior, as the like super mom. And then we have to, and then of course they expect that from us. That's what they've seen. So being willing to say, oh my gosh, I messed up. I make mistakes every day, but man, I try, and man, I love you. And I'm going to try better. I think it goes a long way to actually them seeing you as stronger rather than weaker. I think we're afraid to look weak, but I think it makes us look stronger to them.
Yeah. I love when I have moments where I do mess up and I say, okay, that was an example of what not to do. It's like, you're always learning, you're always teaching. And, sometimes you do teach what not to do because, we're human, like we mess things up. I want to jump back into, something you said right at the beginning, where you said this has been a really hard week at Talks with Shafer. Can we jump into that a little bit and talk about what's going on?
Yeah. So a friend of mine died. It was reportedly by suicide a few days ago.
So sorry.
And thank you. It's a big loss. We live in a really small community, and it's such a loss for our community. And my kids and I were literally driving by the store that he owned last week. And looking back, it was likely literally the day he died, which there's some, I don't know, there's some cosmic feeling I have in my body why my kids said this suddenly. But we were driving down the street downtown near where he lived and worked, and one said, I miss him. And the other chimed in, I miss him too. And I said, well, let's go stop by and see him. There's no reason that we can't do that, you know? And we kind of talked about it. It was a really busy week. There were 2 parent teacher conferences. There was theater practice. You go back to theater. There's theater practice every single night of the week. And so what we landed on was, you know, how about, because we do this awesome trick-or-treating in our town that's during the day before Halloween every year, where you go from store to store. And it's just such a beautiful, like, small town thing. We always look forward to it. And I said, well, we can just stop by casually that day, you know, so it'll be less of a, you know, nerve-wracking thing for the kids to go in. And so they were so excited. And I was really excited because he had been going through a lot in his life, and he was very publicly active. He was a huge fan of Ernest Hemingway, who had ties to our area. And so he always did cool tours, and he would participate in movies and meetings. He was the president of a society that really furthered the work of this writer. So he was really active and beloved in this community. And he'd been going through a lot over the last 6 months. And we had spoken, provided support, and he was just really, really, really struggling. And I had this idea that we were going to do a podcast episode that was more about local people, a series, and that we were going to kick it off with his Reclaiming His Story episode, where he talked about the things he loved, and he talked about the impact that he couldn't wait to continue to have. Because for me, and maybe it was the coach in me and the friend in me, I was like, we need to repot. Like, we're stuck. You know, we're stuck in this place that you can't grow in. And I went online. I didn't know of his passing. And I went online to look for something, because I was going to go pitch this program to him, because I knew it was going to be a tough sell, because I knew he was still really struggling. But I was thinking to myself, I can't save him, right? I can't get him out of this, but maybe I can give him one little data point that makes him feel that his voice matters, just for 1 hour. Because I've seen the transformative things that happen with that through the work I'm doing. And so I went online to try to find him, and I found out that he had passed away, and it had been posted on someone's page a day before.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's crazy. That's so sad.
And he'd been resonating in our minds. Like, he had been kind of like with us that whole week after he passed. And it just, one, reminded me of something that I, in general, have been really good at, but we get lazy. We get sloppy in life, right? We get comfortable, and we forget that when we want to do the thing, time is of the essence. Do the thing. You want to talk to the person that you love, give them a call. Don't wait, right? I know you're studying for a test, but just be like, listen, I've got 5 minutes. I can't really talk, but I just want to say I love you, and I'm just so glad you're here, right? Like, just do it now, because for none of us is our future guaranteed. And that can be scary, and that can be beautiful. It can be all sorts of things, but it's just the truth. Yeah. And so it really reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think that we definitely, I say that even just on a regular basis, that send the text message, make the phone call, whatever it is, just to let the person know that you're thinking about them. I have a couple of friends that I haven't talked to in a bit. And so something simple. I sent a text to both of them saying, I really miss you. And it's a conversation starter too. It's kind of like, I'm thinking about you. I might not have time to have a full conversation right now, but I'm thinking about you, and I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. So I think that is great advice for everybody, because you don't know what anybody else is going through. And if you can be any kind of beacon of light, I think it's so important.
You don't. And I think you get stuck, especially if it's someone close to you, in this cycle of, shame and guilt, and then you forgive yourself, and then maybe you go back in the shame and guilt. But for me, I have to take a step out and recognize, but that's what that person was going through. And they were going through it quietly and silently, and they were just suffering. And often what people express who have attempted and not completed suicide is that they didn't ask for help because they didn't want to feel like a burden. They didn't want to bother any, they didn't think they were worth bothering someone. But at the end of the day, how wonderful is it when we even get to help someone at the grocery store pick something off of a shelf, right? Like you go around all day feeling like, oh, I helped someone today. Like we love helping. I can't think of a single time someone asked me for help when I thought, what a burden. Not a single time.
It's so funny how we get that in our head that if we ask for help, first of all, two parts to it. If we ask for help, then that makes us weak, but also we don't want to burden anybody. And I'm like, burden me. Like that. It's not a burden. Like, please ask because I want to help, but I have to remind myself of that because when I need help, I'm like, oh, I got it. I can do this. No, I don't. I don't. I need to ask for help. And I think it's so important that we remind ourselves of that. Of course, we are coming up on our time. So I want to go through a couple more things. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah. Well, I think, going from the end of someone's life to the beginning of someone's life, when we step out of that feeling of sadness, then I think is when we can do the work of thinking, how can we make things better, right, for the next generation? Because they're going to go through really tough things in their lives. And how can we arm them with tools for what I think is one of the most important things for us to develop, and we touched on it with you, Olivia, the emotional regulation, the understanding of the me versus you, the understanding of what do my emotions mean and how can I respond to them in a healthy way to make choices that are good for me and therefore are good for the people around me. And I'm a big proponent of children's literature being a way for us to teach that. And just like a lot of what is learned in childhood is caught, not taught, right? We talk about that a lot, what's modeled for us. A lot of people are parents and they didn't have emotional regulation modeled to them, or patience, or connection over correction, right? Very heavy correction in parenting rather than connection often in the models of parenting we experienced when we were young. And now we have our kids. We know we didn't like it. We know it didn't work well, but we don't know how to do it differently. And so with my book, The Boy and His Brightly Colored Blocks, it's a love letter to kids and it's a love letter to parents. And it's a bit instructional. It's instructional for the kids. When I read it to the kids, it's amazing how they see through going through a day with this boy who loves his brightly colored blocks and he dislikes anything that takes him away from them. And it's life, right? So he has to eat, and by the way, mom wants him to eat the whole sandwich, but the gooey center is awful because he has some textural issues, right? So like I can only eat the crunchy part. And then I have to take a bath and do all these things that are a nuisance and he gets upset. But instead of joining him in that dysregulation, mom is really centered in who she is versus who he is and just showing up for him in a calm and supportive way so that we acknowledge that we're upset, right? We respect one another, but then we help one another move on and gift them that regulation rather than do the thing that very often we're tempted to do, which is, stop whining. We have to go. Yeah. Goodness, I've told you this a million times. Right? It's so easy to mirror someone's frustration because, we're wired to do that. And we also were modeled that. But when we really actively work on a different way of reaction and that becomes a habit for us. And, look at James Clear's book, Habits, right? We talk about habits are really difficult to form. They take a lot of intention, but once you have a habit, it's sticky. Habits are really sticky. So trying out new habits and how we interact with our kids. And I was on a podcast with, I'm forgetting his name. I was on a podcast. I'm forgetting his real name. I was on the podcast with the post office official from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, Mr. McFeely. And he is on a podcast now, and he's just such a lovely David. He's such a lovely person, and he really embodies Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And he was so kind to review my book, and he gave it such a beautiful review, David Newell. And he kept going back to, in our discussion and in his review, like, man, I really think this will help with child abuse. I really think this will help with child abuse if you can get it in the right place. Because again, so many people, I wrote the book for my child to demonstrate how we had gotten to a place of emotional regulation, because it didn't happen overnight and it took a lot of modeling. But the way the book came across to the reader, right, we have all of these unintentional side effects of the things that we do and the things we put out in the world, was, wow, this helps me think of a new way to approach this encounter with skills that I didn't learn before and that I can pick up from reading this. So I was so honored when he repeatedly went back to that, and it saw me see the book in a different way. And that we, through children's literature, learn so much, not just our children, but us. And I'm sure that you, Simone, can think back to books that you loved reading to your kids because you'd read them and they'd make you just feel something that regular life didn't. You never paused to actually like sit in those feelings. Do you have a book that just like really you think of when reading with the kids?
Tiki Tiki Tembo. Remember that one?
Yes.
Yeah. It's, you know, it was just the kids just like the, it wasn't necessarily the messaging of it, but just the way it sounded. Tiki Tiki Tembo, no Sarembo. Something out of the well. Like, it's so funny because, I mean, it's been years since I read it, but I can still picture what the book cover looks like, and I can still remember that piece of it. So, yeah, I think that children's books have a huge impact, and it's that time that you spend with your child too, reading to them. I think that is so important. And I always love that when they were little, and then they grow up and they do their own thing. At least
But
one
then
has a
they
podcast with
the
me.
books. Yeah, one has a
Yeah.
podcast with you. And then like when they leave, you know, I don't know, my parents did this. They sent me with the books. They'd put them in a nice Tupperware so that they stayed nice. I highly recommend that, because if you put them in boxes, they can kind of be worse for wear. And sent me with these books. And it's just so beautiful to read them. And then if you end up having children or you go somewhere to read books, you can even, they have programs to go to animal shelters and read children's books.
Yeah.
Because like
we used
that's
to
the
do that.
power of children's books, right?
Yeah.
So when you look back at those, they hold those memories. And it's because, like you said, not only was it a story and the story had its own merit and value, but it was that time and that connection and that pause that the book basically was a space holder for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Olivia, give me your calendar.
No, you're not on a one-way, single-lane street. There is a fork in the road, and it's possible to take the other path.
I think that applies as well. I think that's a good one, right? Think about
That was perfect.
where you want to go, So where can people find you?
Yeah. So if you Google Talks with Dr. Shafer, I'm obnoxiously present. So you can find me on whatever social media that it is that you like, or YouTube. And my website is drshaferstedronova.com.
Perfect. Again, thank you for being here with us today. And thank you for listening to this episode of Her Unshakable Confidence. Always remember, you are unshakable.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Her Unshakable Confidence with Simone and Olivia Knego. We hope this episode has made your day just a little bit brighter and given you the inspiration you need to confidently go about your week. Always remember to be authentically you. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to connect with them on Instagram at Simone Knego and at Olivia Knego. Till next time.